What's going on, guys? We are back with another video, and today I'm bringing you the beginning after the end, chapter 217 to chapter 218. Let's get to it. Chapter picks up with Arthur and the gang at the training facility. Arthur tells Emily and Alanis they work fast, but maybe a little rest is in order. Emily says she'll be fine as she attaches magical training bands onto Arthur's arm. We then see Virion, Vikes, and Beret enter the training grounds looking for Arthur. Arthur is more annoyed than anything his master keeps interrupting his training. Beret speaks to Kathleen and says she's gotten stronger. We then get the craziest reveal that Beret is Kathleen's master and teacher. Kathleen goes on to say training with Arthur and the elders helped a lot. Beret then says since she has free time, she'll join them in their training session. As both Beret and Arthur flare their magical powers and begin the battle, Kathleen goes on to say this is one of the moments that if you blink, you might miss something crucial. Beret then creates an ice spear and launches her assault against Arthur. Arthur dodges her attack and then counters with his own blue flames. Beret disperses the flames using her ice magic and continues her assault by creating ice spears and sends them flying at Arthur. Bunn then says it's apparent how much Arthur was holding back during their training, and Virion says it's a bad habit of Arthur's to hold back if he suspects you're weaker than him. Camus wonders why Arthur hasn't used Realm Heart. Ellie says so Arthur can enjoy the fight more. It's not every day you see him this happy. As the fight continues, Beret summons a fucking ice dragon and sends it at Arthur. Arthur uses his flames to create a shockwave that destroys it. We then see the elders and Vikes placing bets on who's gonna win the battle. I'm telling y'all, these niggas is wildin' in the background. We then see Arthur start sending flying slashes towards Beret, which start to dissolve, since the air pressure drops when the air starts to cool. Beret then launches her ice spears at Arthur, only for Arthur to counter by using his wind to increase the heat of his flames around him. Kathleen then wonders why Arthur didn't disperse the flames, isn't it draining his magical power? But as she says that, Arthur goes full Sukuna mode, unleashing a lightning spear cloaked in blue flames at Beret. But Beret isn't no lame bitch. She uses her ice magic to counter Arthur. As the dust settles, we see Beret cloaked in ice and Arthur in his Realm Heart form, ready to finish the battle. Chapter then cuts to Virion asking Vikes can he beat Arthur in the fight. Fuck no, he can't. Ellie then asks what's going on, and Vikes says Arthur is countering Beret's spells before they even manifest. He then says the popping sounds are mana colliding and canceling each other out. As we cut back to the fight, Arthur tries to kick Beret, but she uses ice magic to block the attack. Arthur then gathers himself and launches a series of blows against Beret, which she blocks mainly because she that bitch, like let's be honest. Beret then creates a sword of ice and clashes with Arthur's sword of ice. Beret's sword is stronger, but Arthur has the upper hand in close range combat, and if his sword breaks, he just creates a new one, while simultaneously flowing his attacks into each other. As the battle continues, Arthur's last sword breaks, giving Beret a chance to bind his arm, securing her victory over him. Arthur thanks her for the training and says his ice magic pales in comparison to hers. Beret says if Arthur had held Realm Heart for any longer, he would have won. The chapter then transitions to Virion, Bunn, and Camus sad because they lost their bets that Arthur would win, as the chapter 217 comes to an end. Alright, we not done yet, y'all. We still got chapter 218 to get into, so let's go. We then transition into chapter 218 with Arthur receiving feedback from his training. Hester says his fire magic is strong, but he uses too much unnecessary mana. Bunn says he should have used earth magic as a base for his final attack, and Camus says he tends to revert back to what's familiar to him. For example, using his wind magic to bolster his spells was a good idea, but his application was surface level. Instead of Arthur using wind to push the lightning integrated into the spell, he'd be able to create a spinning vortex with more piercing power without using much mana. Vikes says because of the element's nature, lightning is much harder to contain and shape compared to fire. Vikes goes on to say it would be more efficient to mold the fire into a piercing shape and coating it with lightning. Arthur thanks Vikes, but is conflicted since he's the one who killed his right of a younger brother. Beret adds on by saying Arthur uses his ice magic as a distraction to perform large-scale attacks, which makes him predictable, but his spell chain and his speed make up for this slight shortcoming. But in a prolonged battle, Arthur would always lose. As the chapter continues, we see Ellie leaving with Boo, and Alanis talking to Arthur about how Ellie acts different from him. Arthur says she takes after their father. Alanis then says Arthur must take after their mother. Arthur disagrees and says he'd like to think he took after both of them, but he isn't sure. Alanis wondered what Arthur mean by this statement, but gets no reply from him. The chapter then shifts gears to the elders wondering who amongst them is the strongest. Emily says after gathering more data she'll be able to inform them. Arthur then cuts in the conversation and says no matter who the strongest is, he's the lucky one for being able to train with such strong mages, and thanks them and says he won't take this for granted. As multiple weeks pass, Arthur spends the remaining time with his sister and training with the elders and Catherine. He says they challenged him more than any soldier would on the battlefield he has met. The chapter then cuts to the Queen of Elves asking Gideon about the magical trains. Gideon says the trains will carry 20 times more supplies than the old carriages. He also says in order to avoid attacks, the trains will be built underground. King Bleddard chimes in and says that will cost a lot of money, but Arthur tries persuading the king by saying the project solves 3 problems at once: the supply route issue, the rising cost of purchasing mana beasts, and the recent increase in poverty. Varian then says not to think of the train as a one-off venture, but as the beginning of a new era, providing a new line of work that does not require magic. Whether it's building the tracks or planning a route from one city to another, they should foster and reward these skills as an investment towards the future. After an anonymous vote, the project to build the underground train was approved, along with several new policies, one of which was the ban of slave labor. As the chapter comes to an end, Arthur says it's interesting to witness a new era, one that only existed in textbooks in his old world, and while he can't stop the world with his knowledge, he could at least help the people who lived in it by using it.